South of Midnight easily is one of the most predictable gaming disasters ever. Easily. This will beat Concord in how absolutely pathetic it is. If I had to describe what South of Midnight is by using other games, I would say that it's roughly 5% Elden Ring if it was complete trash, with a lot of Voked baked on top of it. This thing is gonna be an amazing disaster. Guaranteed, you can trust my word for it. Disaster, everyone knows it.
South of Midnight was revealed at last year's Xbox Summer Games Showcase. Remember that one where Xbox delivered banger after banger and it felt like the glory days of E3 again? Sandwiched in there amidst Fable, Perfect
Not at all. And also, Fable is shit. Perfect Dark is literally canon the game.
Dark and Doom Dark Ages, it would have been easy for South of Midnight to have gotten lost in the shuffle, but it's a testament to the incredible presentation, art design, music, and characterization that this still managed to stand out. Of course, we shouldn't be too surprised that this one looked as good as it did, because it is, after all, from Compulsion Games. This is the studio
I must be blind in that case because I have no idea what looks impressive here.
behind Contrast and We Happy Few. Compulsion clearly have a knack for combining stark imagery and evocative narratives, which made a lot of sense given that it was founded by one Guillaume Provost, who had earlier spent a chunk of his career at Arcane. Microsoft acquired Compulsion back in 2018 and they immediately began work on South of Midnight. Some 6 years later, we'd get a really good look at it at the most recent Xbox Developer Direct, and I'm not gonna lie, I was low-key blown away by what they showed off. The initial reveal trailer didn't give away too much, but this deep dive showcased some truly inspired art.
The initial trailer gave away everything you want to know about this game, how bad it's gonna be. The combat looks dull, the puzzles are not puzzly at all, and it's just kind of a platformer with a little bit of story here and there. And the story effectively is, why can't white man be less evil? Done. Impressive, I know.
Art design, and the Deep South setting was super appealing because way too few games choose to set themselves there. The gameplay
Also, by a game that's made by I'm assuming at this point, like, super majority black creators and staff and whatnot, it's kind of funny how they are portraying the American South in the most stereotypical ways possible. Like, everything about this game is a stereotypical thing about the South. And I have a feeling that these people would not be exactly happy if people were stereotypical about blacks. But I mean, for each their own.
showcase didn't look amazing since it seemed like fairly standard third-person action-adventure platformy stuff, but the visuals, the cast of characters, the music, the narrative themes being teased, all that stuff really rung my bell. So when Microsoft invited me to go hands-on with the game, I was very pumped, and I don't want to be coy, this did not disappoint, though it did sharpen my view that this one is very much about the vibes and less about the gameplay, but I'll explain all of that as we go. Just so you know the conditions for the preview, I played around 2 hours of it on an Xbox Series S console, and the footage that you're seeing here is my own gameplay. This is an in-progress build, and you can definitely tell because
Wait, that felt horrible.
the footage that you're seeing here is my own gameplay. This is an
Okay, look.
in-progress build.
Oh, Jesus. They can't even manage to turn the camera around properly. This is cooked.
And you can definitely tell because I certainly noticed a few technical issues, namely some frame rate drops and plenty of screen tearing. But Compulsion have said they're targeting 60 FPS for this, with the Series X aiming at 4K and the Series S shooting for 1080p. The section I played through was actually chapter 3 of the game, so I missed how the main character Hazel got herself into this mess. There were no capture restrictions, so I can show you everything I experienced. The game is arriving on April 8th for Xbox consoles and PC, and it will of course be day 1 on Game Pass. So high level
Day 1 on Game Pass is all you need? No shit. Wow, Xbox, make it easier for us to figure out what's good and bad.
I went into this one seeking
Well, to be fair, everything is now Day 1 on Game Pass because Xbox can't really sell copies of games any longer. So, Game Pass is like the only thing.
vibes, and that is exactly what I got. There's a cinematic that plays at the start that really sets the visual tone for the game. Here, just take a look.
Oh, Jesus, what the fuck is this? Are we playing as a trans man now? Like, what the hell just happened, okay? Oh, Jesus. Okay, so I have one good thing to tell you about South of Midnight, though, And that is the fact that you are able to actually cancel, turn off the stupid stop animation shit that they're going for, because it's one of the worst that I have seen in my life. Okay, this is not Cataline levels of wow, this is pretty good. No. This is horrible. Horrible. Absolutely dreadful, in fact. It looks like it's lagging constantly because they did not put effort into it. Also, why the fuck is this claymation? Do you think she's stealing? I think she's stealing.
So while the rest of South of Midnight doesn't look quite like this, the opening cinematic certainly sets the scene. This puppet-like, stop-motion, animated, animatronics thing immediately tells you that this is going to be a very visually led game. There's something arresting and unsettling about these images. It's not horror, but it's abstract enough that it flirts at the edges of horror, like Jim Henson's Dark Crystal or something, but obviously set in the Deep South. And that was the part that really got me on the hook here. I don't exactly know why, but I'm just really fascinated by stories set in the Deep South. There's a mythology around that region which, again, flirts at the edges of horror. Urban legends and the bayou and voodoo. There's a reason that stuff like
Bro's literally talking like he has only lived in the city all his life and never seen a fucking tree grow in a fucking, I don't know, non-park, I guess. Oh, the South, it's horror. Ain't that pretty racist, technically?
True Detective and Resident Evil 7 and yes, Hunt Showdown all chose this as a setting. In popular imagining, it's a world that we can look at but can't truly see, that we can stand in without truly being there. We're always on this side of the looking glass until some book or film or TV show lets us pass through to the other side. That appears to be Hazel's journey here in South of Midnight. Like I said, I didn't get to play the opening
I'm sorry, did stuff just load in during the cutscene? That's wild.
chapters, so I don't quite know how she got here, but she's clearly stepped into a world that she's never seen before and she's just trying to make sense of it. She has newly discovered powers in the form of her weaving. She's talking to a giant catfish who's suspended in the grip of a large tree that also seems to be a person somehow. She's exploring a swampy village where everyone seems to have been evicted for reasons unknown, and she's fighting
So many great questions. Are you gonna find out the meaning of these questions? Yeah, it's probably stupid.
malevolent shadows that move between realities. In Chapter 3, Hazel is still figuring all of this out, and it was cool to watch her grapple with all of that. I was super into her dialogue, her delivery, her overall character.
Wait, what do you mean still trying to figure this out? I mean, it's the last chapter or something, right? Wouldn't it be time to wrap the fuck up?
Yeah, she was a fish out of water, no pun intended, but she wasn't doing what Austin Walker referred to as like the smirking protagonist thing, someone cringing at what was going on around her in the hope that she might placate a more cynical audience. No, Hazel is as skeptical and weirded out as she needs to be in order to make her seem real, but she also rolls with the punches, which invites us to do the same.
Would you kindly do your weavy thing and help me down?
What weavy thing?
Unquestionably, it was the character.
What wavy thing? Kill me.
And narrative of this whole sequence that won me over more than anything else. Hazel is cool. The giant magic talking catfish thing sounds like Gambit, and I'm super into that. At one point, you meet a crazy hillbilly dude who manages to leave his mark in just a few lines of dialogue. Everyone and everything you meet feels like a lot of love has been poured into it. Same goes for the overall story, which I suspect will be the fulcrum for this whole experience. So the truth is, I played this for 2 hours, and the first 90 minutes I was like, okay, this is nice, but it wasn't.
Like, what the... Damn, it's just so dull.
Really grabbing me. Then something happened in the story and I was like, whoa, okay, Jesus. It was very dark in a kind of gothic fairy tale sense, but also profoundly sad and very affecting. After that point, that event sets up a huge climactic set
Sad and very affecting, Jesus.
piece that involves a new explorable area, a chase sequence, and a musical number that recounts the events of the chapter in a melancholic southern dirge. So at this point...
Ah, yes, a music number, the thing that everyone wanted in there, whatever the hell this is honestly supposed to be game.
I was fully locked in, and when the preview build wrapped, I was like, okay, I get what this is now. To me, this is very much like Psychonauts, a third-person action platformer that uses each of its levels to tell a story. The gameplay is kind of incidental to the whole affair, but the game uses visual presentation, settings, characters, narrative, and music to tell these interactive storylines. And if the rest of the game's stories are as compelling as this one, then that's going to make for a great experience, I think. But yeah, like Psychonauts, the gameplay is not the focus here, I don't think. So this is a third-person action platformer. When you're not watching cutscenes, you'll spend most of your time running around fairly linear environments, just jumping on stuff. It's very forgiving in its platforming. Some of the stuff you're jumping on can look a little narrow, but when you land near the edges of it, you feel that there's plenty of invisible geometry kicking in to stop you from falling. So it's a platformer, but it's not one that's looking to ask much of you mechanically.
Yeah, this is why we have not seen any real gameplay of this, because it is just this. Press jump button, glide, maybe do a spindly spoodly thing, and there you go, whole fucking game.
At least it wasn't in this part of the demo.
Listen, if Hellblade Senua's Saga, The Cat and Returns, did not succeed, then this shit ain't succeeding either.
I don't know if it gets much harder later on. In terms of spicing up that platforming, there isn't too much that goes into it. A press of the left bumper allows you to solidify objects so you can jump on them. You can double jump. At one point, you unlock the ability to glide a short distance. Toward the end of the preview, I got the ability to wall run. Again, nothing we haven't seen before, and the implementation of all this stuff is pretty workmanlike, but it's very competent, and at no point did I feel like I was fighting the controls or the mechanics, or that the game was trying to needlessly make things more difficult, rather than...
At no point currently I think that there is a game being played also, but that's maybe just a coincidence, who honestly knows. Do you feel like there's a game here? No.
be a focus of the game, it's clear that Compulsion are using this platforming as a pacing mechanism in between the cutscenes and the combat arenas. So the combat side of South of Midnight was actually quite surprising. This is a game centered on its story, with very relaxed, low stakes platforming, and then you enter a combat arena and the intensity suddenly spikes to like 15 out of 10. It's quite jarring. The way it works is that you won't find any enemies walking around the world. Instead, you'll enter these clearly designated combat arenas, and when you do, the enemies will spawn in waves. They're no joke. They each have a
Spawn in waves. Yeah, that sounds fun.
variety of moves that force you to stay on your toes, dodging regularly to avoid their attacks. The more mobile enemies are
I'm pretty sure there's literally just 3 kind of enemies, by the way.
particularly ferocious, moving in really fast and aiming to surround you as much as possible. Everything deals lots of damage and takes a fair amount of time to drop. It's not easy. It's not super hard. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't Ninja Gaiden or anything, but it's tricky enough that I died a few times and I had plenty of other close calls. It's a difficulty spike that doesn't feel fully aligned to the rest of the overall experience, but I do think that it helps the game's pacing, since it does provide a big shot of adrenaline in an experience that is often just coasting along at 60 BPM. I will say though that the suite of abilities at your disposal don't really feel fit for purpose at this point. Like, there's one that can kind of stun enemies, another one that pulls them towards you, and another that kind of knocks them or projectiles away. Given that all you can really rely on to deal damage is a basic attack, it does feel like these abilities should have had more damage utility, so I don't know if that comes later on, but for now, it does feel like...
Later on, again, you're probably at the literal goddamn fucking end of the game. What do you mean later on? What, when the end credits roll, then you're gonna unlock something that's actually fun?
Kit is missing something essential that would really tie combat together. So at this point I've said that the levels are linear, the platforming is simple, and the combat doesn't quite hang together yet. So why am I walking away from South of Midnight feeling pretty jazzed about it and excited
Money. Money. Access. Money.
to play more? Well, it's for the simple reason that we come to different games for different things. Again, coming back to that Psychonauts comparison, everything that I
Yeah, I come to shit games for a shit experience, and when I get that, I'm happy because I'm a retard.
just said about South of Midnight could also have been said about Psychonauts, and Psychonauts fucking rules. It's incredible. Like, hands down one of the best Xbox games and criminally overlooked. A good game isn't always good because it does everything well. Sometimes it can be good because it just does one thing really well. And so far, I'm all in on South of Midnight's world, characters, music, and storytelling. It's sort of creepy looking, but also beautiful, and it's sad, but also hopeful, and it's fantastical while also feeling like it has its feet firmly on the ground. For me, South of Midnight looks like the perfect kind of game for Game Pass, and that's a phrase that gets bandied about in a very derogatory sense, like
Is that music what I can hear a child screaming at in the background of his?
It implies that the game is not good enough to justify a box price and could only live on a subscription service. And look, sometimes that's true, sure, but in the case of games like South of Midnight, I think the term...
Dude, Xbox is so fucked, honestly. Because spending... How much do you think this shit is gonna cost? Probably 100 mil, right? Because it's an Xbox title. It has to cost like 100 mil. Maybe more, maybe less, who knows? But in any case, like, you invest 100 mil into this shit? Yeah, it's free to play and it's supposed to be there to sell Game Pass subscriptions, but Xbox is constantly, month after month, reporting that their subscription numbers for Game Pass is not working out. Not working out for some reason, God knows why, who knows? Everyone with a brain knows. It's because they have games like this, like, why would I even buy something for $10 to play this shit for free? Why aren't you paying me money to play this at this point? Because that seems like the more logical thing to do, to happen.
Term means something else. The fact is, people's purchasing habits have changed, and they're less likely to take a chance on new IP, particularly one like this, which is more artistic, less conventional. In these instances, Game Pass is a godsend because it lets developers reach a far wider audience than they otherwise might have been able to. Based on my 2 hours with the game, South of Midnight doesn't strike me as the kind of game that's going to sell 5 million units, but it does strike me as the sort of game that people
Bro, it doesn't strike me as a game that's going to sell 50k units.
Boot up on a whim when they're browsing Game Pass, and they find themselves suddenly and unexpectedly spirited away, and maybe South of Midnight becomes one of the best games they'll play all year, and they never would have had that experience.
Maybe South of Midnight is going to have roughly 5 players playing it and a bunch of Xbox fans saying, "No, it's awesome, just don't listen to the haters. The haters." And then they probably 41% themselves. It is what it is.
Were it not for Game Pass. Too early to judge, of course, have to experience the full game when it arrives.
Yeah, too early to judge when you literally experienced everything the game has to offer. That's it. That is it. Okay? If you're honestly interested in South of Midnight, the best you can probably do is gonna go and watch a day once all story cutscene South of Midnight YouTube video. That's it. That's the best you can do. Don't buy that shitty Game Pass. Just watch, like, I don't know, a 1 hour long video of what the hell this garbage is, and you're gonna be like, wow, thank God I didn't waste my money on that. Anyway, that was Skill Up 10 out of 10. Oh, bye!